Hey guys, welcome back to another video. I think the next 200 days are going to be extremely crucial for Bitcoin, and I want to show you why in this video. So today I want to show you three things. First, where we are in this potential corrective period compared to every prior Bitcoin bear market. Second, the on-chain price levels and where critical support sits historically, and third, the MVRV metric and how it can help tell us where deep this could go, right? So I personally do think that on-chain data is much better at timing market cycle bottoms than timing market cycle tops. It has been much more consistent over the years and given much more reliable signals. So if you're interested in learning more about any of these metrics in the video, check out the website chartinspect.com. Link is in the description below. So without further ado, let's dive into the charts. So this first chart here is the bear market drawdown chart, and I know it says bull market, but you can switch between two different views, right? So we're gonna look at what the bear market thesis would look like, and what this does basically is take every Bitcoin bear market from peak to bottom and indexes them all to start at around 100% at the peak, right? So from the peak to the bottom. So every colored line here represents a different bear market cycle, right? So the orange line is the 2011 to 2012 bear market. That lasted 163 days, and we saw a negative 93% drawdown. That one was pretty brutal, right? The next one is the red line here, and that's the 2013 to 2015 bear market. That one lasted 411 days, and it had a negative 85% drawdown. And so the next one is the blue line. That's the 2017 and 2018 bear market. That one lasted 363 days with a negative 83% drawdown. And the green line is the 2021 to 2022 bear market, 378 days and a negative 77% drawdown. So right now, the white line, that's the one on the right here. That's where we are right now. We're on day 63 of this current drawdown, down from around, down at about negative 32% from the 126K price that we hit on October 6th, right? So these bars show the duration and the magnitude of each bear market. You can see that the bear markets have been getting longer on average in duration, but still staying around that 1 year period, 365 days around that. So 2017 was around a year. Last one was around a year as well, give or take a couple of days, right? A couple 20 days, 30 days or so. And so we are seeing that these drawdowns are getting shallower in percentage drawdown. So in 2011, negative 93%, 85, 83, 77, and potentially 32 and deeper into this correction currently. So the question is right now, how deep does this one go and how long does it last, right? I think another question you as an individual really have to internalize is that if you are new to Bitcoin and got in at, 80,000, 100,000, or even at the all-time high at 126K, it's possible that, you will be underwater for the next couple hundred days. And that's totally normal. Bitcoin has historically showcased this sort of inherent volatility. Over time, of course, this volatility will diminish, just like any other emerging asset class. It's going to have its ups and downs. So if we follow this potential pattern of shallower drawdowns over time, which I think is the most logical assumption, maybe this one only goes, negative 50 to negative 60%. That would put us around $50,000 to $60,000. And so if we do get a deeper correction, like in the earlier cycles, we could see perhaps negative 65% or 70% drawdowns. That would take you below $50,000, which I personally don't think Bitcoin has to go that low, especially now that we may have a potentially more hawkish Federal Reserve chair incoming, as well as inflation staying a bit steadier, even though employment is still steadily going up a little bit. And then, of course, the duration. The last bear market lasted 378 days. If this one is similar, we're looking at another 300 days from here. That'll take us well into late 2026 and perhaps early 2027 before seeing any real return to profitability, right? So here's the key insight from this chart, in my opinion. In every prior bear market, right, the first 100 to 200 days were the most critical. That's when we found out, how many people were really in Bitcoin for the long term. If we look at 2013 to 2015, the red line here, the first 100 to 200 days, the first 100 days took us from that 100% drawdown, the all-time high, down to around 50% from at around $500, right? So Then we chopped around for another year or so before finding the actual bottom at around $200. And so if we look at 2021 to 2022, the green line here, the first 150 days took us from about $64,000 to down to around negative 53%, negative 60%. And then we only had another negative 10% drawdown from there. And so we're still at day 63 right now. The next 100 to 200 days, so roughly the next 3 to 6 months, are going to tell us, are we headed to a more substantial drawdown, like 60 to 70%? That would be, the optimistic case, negative 50 to negative 60% drawdown. Or are we heading, deeper into that negative 70% territory like we saw in the prior cycle? That's the deeper bear market scenario. And that's why I'm saying, over the next 200 days, I think Bitcoin will historically this is historically a very crucial zone for Bitcoin. And the trajectory of these first 100 to 200 days of a bear market can determine how deep the full correction goes. The longer Bitcoin becomes less profitable is when more holders begin to realize more losses on chain. And that's what we're going to look at in the next chart. So this chart shows, the one on the left here shows that shows us basically the on-chain price levels for Bitcoin. So how we can value Bitcoin based on some on-chain statistics, right? So let's go over a few of these metrics here. So this first one is the blue line here. That's the realized price. And that's around $56,000 right now. That's the average price paid for all Bitcoin, right? This is like, the deep accumulation territory for Bitcoin. We haven't yet tested it since we broke above it around after the 2022 bear market was over. And the next one I want to look at is the green line here. That's the true market mean. That's currently at around $81,000. That's the average cost basis of actively moved coins. And that's been a pretty important support level like we've talked about in some of the previous videos. So Bitcoin is currently at around $91,000. We tested, that true market mean a few weeks ago at $80,000 and bounced from that level. This is showing the intraday levels, not the wicks, but we did test that level on an intraday level. So historically, the true market mean has been the last line of defense in bull markets. We can see that in 2021, the summer, we held it, went on to hit new all-time highs. But then as 2022 came around, the bear market year, that's when we historically found a little bit of support, but ultimately broke down into the realized price. So I think over the next 200 days, do we hold this $81,000 level and bounce back up, or do we break down towards the $56,000 realized price? And so the next chart I want to look at is the MVRV metric with color-coded zones. So MVRV stands for market value to realized value. It's basically comparing Bitcoin's market cap to its realized cap. So the realized cap is the aggregate cost basis of all coins that we can look at on chain. So what's useful about this metric is what we can see these color zones here. So when MVRV is in this red area here, about above the +2 standard deviation, that's historically meant that Bitcoin's overheated. That's historically been cycle tops or near cycle tops. You can see the big spikes in around 2011, 2013, in 2017, and 2021. So when Bitcoin is in the green zone, blue to green zone, around the mean or slightly below, that's more balanced, decent accumulation territory. When it's in the blue zone, however, below the -1 standard deviation, that's historically been amazing accumulation zone. So that's deep bear market bottoms. You can see, deep blue zones in 2011, 2015, when we hit that market cycle bottom in 2018, and as well as in 2022, right? So what's interesting about this cycle is that we never really got into the deep red territory at the top. At 126,000, we barely even touched, above the red on some of these metrics. And so one of the metrics I did look at and did talk about on one of my earliest videos, the one that did really well, was the long-term holder profit to volatility ratio. That did hit historically really, overheated levels at around $115,000, $126,000. And we did see, Bitcoin top at around those levels. So we did see a lot of overheating on these metrics. and now we're back into the green here on the MVRV, right? Green basically means that holders are starting to go underwater on their positions, not, catastrophically underwater. That would be the blue territory, but they are starting to feel some pain. And historically, the green zone has been a decent accumulation, for the long term. Blue has been an amazing accumulation zone. So the question in my mind is do we stay in the green and bounce back towards, the yellow for a bit and then finally drop back into the blue? That would mean we're entering, deep into the $56,000 realized price level. So let me put all these back together and sort of explain why the next 200 days or so are very crucial in my opinion. So first, the bear market trajectory. We're at currently day 63, down negative 32% from the peak. Historically, the first 200 to 300 days of a bear market are great times to accumulate more Bitcoin, and can also give us more information on where Bitcoin might be headed next. So if we're headed for a deeper correction, like 65 to 70%, we're going to break through these on-chain support levels and head much lower. While I don't personally think that's the most likely outcome, but could occur, I think Bitcoin is much more mature now, and I think it will mature over the next couple of years, and potentially won't see as high of a drop like many people are expecting to play out. If we're headed towards a more shallow correction, like 50 to 60%, we should start to see some stabilization in the next few months. Maybe we'll potentially find, a bottom around $56,000 the realized price, maybe $60,000. And so the next 200 days, that would take us to day 263. That would pretty much tell us where we are, right? So secondly, we're still holding above the true market mean. This is the first major support, in my opinion. If we hold here, then maybe this isn't just going to be a negative 40% correction and we're near lows, right? That would be the most bullish scenario within, the bear market framework here. If we break below the green line here, the true market mean, the next stop would be the realized price at $56,000 in my opinion. That's a negative 55% correction from the peak of 126,000. And if we break that, we could, go all the way down to previous support levels, like in August of 2024. Well, I think it's much less likely to go down below, $40,000, $45,000. I don't think that's going to happen, right? So third of all, the MVRV zones, we're currently in the green right now, decent accumulation territory, but we're not yet in the blue like we've seen in every prior bear market. If we drop to the blue over the next 3 to 6 months, that would signal Bitcoin is in a deep bear market, and historically has been an extremely good time to accumulate more Bitcoin heavily. So over the next 200 days, I think, we're going to find out a lot of info. My personal view is that we're in for a proper bear market in 2026. I think despite all the good news that, you might be hearing, I still think 2026 will be a bear market year. I think the true market mean eventually will break. I think we'll see blue on the MVRV, and I think we could see a negative 50%, negative 60% drawdown, taking us down to that 50 to 60K range there. But of course, over the next, year or so, that will show us if I'm right or if this is just, a shallower correction. So all in all, you can track these metrics live on ChartInspect.com, the bear market drawdowns, the on-chain price levels, the MVRV, all free, and also other charts as well. If you're a pro member, you can set alerts on a lot of these critical zones here. So if you found this helpful, hit the like, subscribe, comment down below. I'll be tracking a lot of these metrics closely over the next few months and keeping you updated on where we are in this correction. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.